one. Hey, hey guys, what is up? It's your boy Gabe here from the MMA space, and welcome to episode 8 of the MMA space with the one, the only Felicia, the Phenom Spencer. How are you today in this fine Sunday morning?
I'm doing great, just enjoying some coffee, getting ready to have breakfast with my family, so, it's a good day.
That's good. It actually feels really good outside from the last 2 weeks. It's been really hot here in Orlando, and yesterday was the first time I felt a breeze.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right, I remember walking the dogs in the morning and thinking the same thing, it was a nice morning. If it was a little bit colder, I would've put a jacket on, it was like
Yeah,
it
no,
was good.
I think this morning I woke up and it was like 69 degrees, and I was like, "There's no way this is happening. This is not real right now in September."
Right.
But to get into it, you are the former Invicta FC featherweight champion of the world, and I wanted to talk about that because obviously one of my first questions is, um, how do you feel um, of the evolution of women's MMA up to date? Coming from somebody who went through the ranks in Invicta, got into the UFC, and got to the pinnacle, how do you feel that women's MMA today is?
Yeah, I feel like, where it's at now, there's a lot of opportunity to, like, dream big, whereas when I was coming up, it was just like, "Well, let's just see how far it can go," but now there's, we know what the pinnacle of the sport is, so it's like we know where the goal is, for the most part. I know some people prefer to go different routes, um, but that's a pretty cool feeling that I kinda, was a part of that growth, and like I said, when I was coming up, it was just like, "Well, let's just what's the next thing I can try to do or, strive to do, just, see where I can take it," and then when Invicta started, I remember watching the first Invicta, and I was like, "Oh, this is now the goal." The goal was to get into Invicta, and then once I was in Invicta, that's when things started to really open up with, Ronda making waves and getting into the UFC, so then it was like, "Oh, now Invicta is my path to the UFC, that's the goal." So, it all kind of opened up while I was doing it, so it was, definitely a unique, experience.
Do you feel like the competition in almost every weight class in the U well, not in the UFC, but in women's MMA is evolving? Do you feel that girls today are better than girls that were in the game 5 years ago?
For sure, yeah, I think that's always gonna happen, and if you think about, like, when the men's division every time a men's division came to the highest level, it always took years to develop and still always is developing, so I think that the people that are coming in now are and men and women alike, really, it's the kids that started when they were 12, I mean, that are doing it and succeeding, and there's definitely a lot more crossover, especially with the women too, like Kayla Harrison or, well, we started with Rhonda, right? And then now, even Valentina coming over from kickboxing, like there's a lot more appeal to cross over from other sports to get into MMA. So I think there's a lot of that, like helping the growth.
Yeah, because I was talking about it the other day. I was analyzing it where it all started with the conversation of the 10-8 between Alexa Grasso and Valentina
Mhm.
Shevchenko, and I ask you how you feel about that later. But I was talking about it with my friends on how 5 years ago Valentina was dominating this entire division. Like there was nobody stopping her besides, of course, the two losses that she had before Alexa Grasso, which is Amanda Nunes. But now seeing that like these women are now like evolving, like that division is now super competitive to the point where I think that it's gonna change hands. The title's gonna change hands multiple times with girls like Erin Blanchfield, Alexa Grasso, Talia Santos. You got Macy Barber in the picture, and I think it's just amazing how 5 years ago I didn't even think that to where now like that whole division and the aspect in other divisions in women's MMA is like it's crazy. It's like super competitive now, and like I love seeing it.
Yeah, and, I think with any really dominant champion, even on the men's side, it's like there's a lot of parallels where you can't stay champion forever, all the
Forever, yeah.
best eventually, and I think part of it is when Valentina's at the top of the hill, everyone that's getting into the UFC is already thinking about how to approach her. Every time she fights, the whole division is watching, "Okay, how can I best of that. So whoever's at the top is like raising the bar for everybody. It's like no matter what division we're talking about. So, but yeah, definitely a lot of competition. Great division to watch now.
Yeah, of course. It's so much fun. Um, and then another thing is, I noticed you went to UCF,
I
right?
did.
How
Yes.
was it being a knight, and what did you study?
I got a degree in math education.
Wow.
So I'm a math teacher. Back to it this year too. Um, Yeah, I mean, it was a little confusing for, like, family to remember UCF or UFC, because I got mixed up a lot. But yeah, no, it was great, it was very, I was also very distracted with training, so I was like I felt like I had a split personality where I'm a very, like, involved with studies and, trying to get my degree and this and that, and then I would go to the gym and choke people, like just a fun or just yeah, it was a very busy, busy time of my life. But yeah, I always have a special place in my heart for the UCF Knights, and I was, I mean, obviously it was a big part of my life, just going through the experience of going to college, and I went through some different clubs and met lots of different people. Definitely a part of my life that doesn't come up a lot in conversations and stuff, so it's always fun to remember about it and talk about it.
See, did they have? Because I went to FIU, and like I'm obviously from the Kissimmee, Orlando area, but I noticed the other day because I have a friend who is currently enrolled in UCF, and they have a jujitsu club. Has that always been around?
Yeah, there was a jujitsu club when I was there. There was also a taekwondo club and, like, this and
What?
that, and now they actually have, so Professor Laborio,
Yeah.
started a actual course for credit, jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu is a course for credit at UCF. So he went through a whole accreditation process and
Wow.
opened up this opportunity to teach and get credit for it. Just like there are like, like they always joke, you can take basket weaving in college and get credit for it. So you can take jiu-jitsu in college and get college
To get
credit
credit.
for it.
What?
And you're getting taught by Professor Laborio. I went out there when he first started it. I went out there and participated in the class, like helping coach a little bit. So it's a pretty cool evolution of jujitsu and how much I can appreciate all the work that they're doing that we don't pay attention to. That's just building the reputation and the legitimacy of the sport, and it's actually I think it's the first university or college to offer that in the nation. I'm pretty sure, so it's
Yeah,
pretty big
I've
deal.
never I've never heard of a accredited jujitsu class. That's pretty freaking dope.
Yeah, it is. It's really cool.
Because I've never understood, um because when I think about it, it's just like, how is this sport, how at least no gi jujitsu is still not a college sport and an Olympic sport at least, is
Yeah,
still crazy to me. I think it should be. I even think no gi jujitsu should be a high school sport, but I don't think it's gonna happen for a while.
yeah.
And I also like the fact that they do that. And have you always trained in the jungle, like, throughout your entire career when you were in Orlando?
Ever coming to Orlando in 2009 is yeah, I started at the Jungle. I think they had been open for like 6 months at the time.
Really? That's
Um,
pretty cool.
but I came in there as a purple belt already. I trained here in Englewood where I'm staying right now, um, with the jujitsu here and worked my way up to yeah, I started when I was 12 actually with jujitsu and yeah, worked my way up to purple belt by the time I was 18 and then when I moved out there, Mike Lee, the owner of one of the at the time there was 3 owners of the Jungle, Tom Lawler, Seth Petrozelli, and Mike Lee. Mike Lee is also from my hometown. He went to teach, adult MMA when I was doing taekwondo and doing the basic jujitsu class, then I would see him come in with all his, badass MMA guys. Like, so I would always see him in passing growing up, so I met my coach when I was 12, but he wasn't really my coach then. But then when I moved to Orlando, he had just opened up the gym and he kind of took me under and said, come, be part of the Jungle family. So, but yeah, ever since 2009, I've been at the Jungle. So it's definitely been a long ride.
So you moved from Canada in 2009 here, or?
No, I grew up in Southwest Florida. So I moved to Canada when I was like 4, and
Oh,
I did
okay.
lived in Englewood, Florida most of my life. There was a little bit of time in Georgia too, but pretty much all here in Southwest Florida. So
Have you ever went back to visit your hometown in Canada here and there, or
oh, yeah, all my pretty much all of my family, like, both sides of, like, my mom and dad, all my grandparents are there near Montreal, so, um, less often as an adult just because, it's hard to especially when you're broke, back in the day. But yeah, no, we make it a point to go out there, and when we were kids, it was every couple summers we'd be up there, so, um, it's so I got to fight in the western side of Canada. I always was hoping I would be able to fight like in Montreal, which is like the place I was born. And of course, a lot of family and like support there too. So that's always like that was always like, oh, maybe I'd like they'll go do a event there. But never. And I also never fought professionally in Florida either. So,
really?
so
Wow.
yeah. So I think after my second amateur fight, everything was out of state. I never fought again in Florida.
What? That's actually very
Yeah.
surprising because like Florida, dude, there's so many like professional organizations in Florida. I can't keep count anymore. I
Yeah,
lost
no.
track.
So after my second amateur fight, I fought in New Orleans. I fought Macy Chasson, she's a current
Oh,
UFC fighter.
yeah.
And then after that, it was Tough Enough in Vegas. And then I got my Invicta contract, and of course they've never come to Florida. So I fought in Kansas City like 13 times, So yeah, I've never come to Florida to fight since my second amateur fight. So
So after your Invicta career and you get that phone call from the UFC saying, "Hey, we want you to come in." How was that feeling? Like how did you feel that like, "Yo, I'm going to be a UFC fighter like it's
yeah,
happening."
it was kind of like what you'd expect. Well, a little surreal and like, feeling, like, ready to make a splash. I knew and also, like, my position being a featherweight was definitely unique, and I knew, like, "Okay, I have, like, 1 fight, and then I'm fighting for the title," you know? So something like that, something big was really close. So, I didn't and that was also part of the reason why I never ended up taking a manager on because I felt like with my position and with what the division is, they're either gonna want me or they're not, right? So I kinda have, like, a little bit of standing, and, yeah, like, I knew, my first fight was Megan Anderson, and I was like,
Interesting,
"Well,
yeah.
after that, it's gonna be something big," so it was definitely kinda like, "Alright, I'm ready to make go big and then go home."
And
So
then obviously after that you got you got the shot to fight for a world title. And obviously like didn't go your way, but did you take that loss with like something to learn? Were you proud of yourself because you reached that pinnacle of being able to say, I got the chance to fight for a world title in like the best organization in the world? Or what was it something that like you just felt so surreal about? Because like if getting to that position is a one in a million chance. So able to get there is a win in itself.
yeah, in some ways, I do try to stay, like, generally, I'm always, like, positive, looking at the silver lining, so I definitely, like, didn't get too dark about the losses or anything, but I do always just feel like I'm definitely one of those people that I feel like performances are not as good as my potential or like what I do in the gym, which is very normal. A lot of people are like that. And other people, the lucky ones, don't perform well in the gym and then go out and mop the mat with everyone. So, but just kind of like knowing, like being comfortable with, all right, I know who I am and I have, I'm being grateful for what I do have helped just like not make the losses suck as bad, I guess. And like you said, I was definitely happy to even just achieve what I did and like the fact that it did as weird as it is for me to think about that it did inspire the people around me like in my gym like that always made it like okay even if I didn't reach my goal it for the people around me it's like I did reach the goal, or like it was inspiring for them. So it's like that's really probably why I kept a lot of like my head up held high a lot, just knowing that they felt so which I can understand. Like if my teammate made it to the UFC, I'd be like super happy no matter what happened. So yeah, just being grateful. Just I always have like a good feel like I have a pretty good way of looking at perspective and you know that kind of
Yeah,
thing.
and I wanted to ask because I know that when you announced your retirement, a part of it had to do with the mental health aspect of it. Am I correct?
Yeah, just like like nothing that's like necessarily going on. More so just fear of the future, I guess.
Yeah.
Of course, there are things that I've noticed, about my vision or this or that, which, it's like it's part of the game, but I also, I know that there's not a lot of people who kind of take the path that I did and then retire at 30. And that was kind of always my goal was to be like, when I was 20, I was like, let's give it 10 years and I'll retire when I'm 30, because I know that the life is tough on especially your brain and not just fighting but training too. You're getting punched in the head all week,
All the time.
depending on
Yeah.
who you're going with and all that, which I feel like the nice thing is a lot of gyms have really evolved their training style, and the jungle definitely is one of those gyms where you're not getting rocked every week and you're not going hard all the time. So as far as like sparring goes, so I'm glad that we went that route. But yeah, just I see and hear and have experienced stories with when you're older, dementia and and like I know there's obviously a real risk with getting hit in the head all the time, and the experiences I had fighting with Cyborg and Nunez, it's like, well, apparently they're never gonna knock me out, so I'm just gonna take a beat, like, and not that I'm just like, oh, I'm gonna take a beating. I know I could just get better, but in those cases where that night I'm not better than someone, I don't really want to go put myself through that repeated type of experience where I know I'm never gonna give up during the fight, and if I'm not better on that night, I'm gonna stick it through, and that's probably not the best thing for my long term, health. So that was like where it really was going, like thinking about my future and knowing that there's something on the other side of this that um even though I kind of sacrificed like a pretty good part of my career probably, hopefully it also will inspire other fighters to do the same thing when they feel the time is right. So
Do you sometimes get that itch to come back and compete?
I I'm honestly not a super competitive person, I think by nature in a way. Like I feel like a lot of my drive, which is weird because you think you in some ways you have to be, but I think a lot of like my competitiveness is like competing with myself, like trying to prove to myself what I can do. And then when I got to, like when I'm fighting for the titles, like I feel like I'm comfortable with myself now or in the past few years especially where it's like I know who I am and I don't feel like I have to prove that to myself anymore. And honestly, like being competitive with other people was probably my outlet to be able to prove to myself what I could do. And I think that's where the competitiveness came from more than like showing out to other people. Because honestly, like when I'm training in the gym or doing this or that, I feel like I'm like the least competitive person. Like I really don't care if you pass my guard. If I'm on a easygoing day, I'm on an easygoing day and I don't have an ego about it, like whatever. I'll let you do this and we'll do that. So so it is kind of like I'm still trying to figure out the competitiveness part because I do get the itch to like win, but I'm trying to figure out where that itch comes from because I don't think it's actually like to compete with other people. I think it's more like when I need to prove to myself something is when I get the itch more so. But I
That's pretty
enjoy
cool.
training more than fighting. Let's put it
Oh,
that way.
okay. And then
Yeah.
I have a because this is something that I actually wrote. I wanted to talk about it. I wrote a paper when I was in college, and it was about kind of bills and laws because I studied political science in school, and I
Okay.
wanted to talk about the because when you talk about like your vision and all these things for post fighters, like I know that the UFC doesn't really give out anything for anybody after their careers.
Mhm.
So I wanted to ask if the UFC has like helped out with anything like health related after your departure, because like you got these things because of fighting. So I want to know if by any chance if the UFC has came out and like reached out to you to help you out with any of these like health related things.
Mm, no, and there really hasn't been any, like, costs, so I mean, like, during like, post-fight, they really did a great job taking care of the injuries and things that I did get, and you reported in the time that you should, like, just, kind of the way that you expect, like, if you're a fighter, you kinda know, like but they really did take good care of things and make sure I didn't have any expenses post-fight and stuff like that, so, um, I think that the way that it's set up, I mean, like, I don't expect it, expect them to reach out and send me stuff at this point just because I knew what I was getting into. And, I was definitely a person that always made sure I had insurance. That's just my, I can't, can't sleep at night without it. So I always made it happen one way or another. So, I think that's one thing is there are options. And even though they didn't give us, insurance for off time, you know, I know it's not easy for everyone. It's expensive, but I was just always someone that made that a priority, so I made it happen. So, yeah. But it is like it's a really interesting topic to get into, like what responsibilities the UFC should have or could have, and also like fight night injuries and stuff. Um, it's like you also have to take responsibility for how you train, and if I'm training in a way that I think is safe and good, but then other people might be training recklessly, and it's like, should the UFC be responsible for the people who are
Yeah.
reckless in training? So it's a really interesting conversation to have. Um, yeah, I don't think there's really a right answer either. I think it's just like a convoluted mess anyway.
Yeah, there's like so many gray areas to it that
Yeah,
it's
it's
just
like,
like
at what point does
you never
personal responsibility take over? And you're an independent contractor technically, but that's usually where the things come in is like, all right, well, since I am an independent contractor, this is what other things I should be fighting for, like, your likeness and different things. But we all signed the contract that we wanted to sign. So as much as there's certain parts of it that are strange, it's one step at a time, I guess.
And then since you teach, do you teach sixth grade from what like
I teach algebra, so it's really a ninth grade class, but I teach virtual school, so I have students actually as young as fifth grade and all the way up to seniors who are desperately trying to graduate. So it's a really interesting mix of kids and different walks of life. So it's actually a really interesting way to teach.
do you because I remember like during teacher introductions, do you add the part that you were a former UFC fighter?
No, and I used to well, so before I fought for the title, I was using my maiden name, so I did have a couple of students mention like, "Oh, I noticed that you're a fighter," but maybe it's just like in the classroom, I know students are Googling teachers immediately, but I feel like maybe online it's just not as like something that they think to do because they easily could even typing in my married name is Coppinger, so now I use that, and I've never once heard anything said anything like that. I did put in like if you click from the homepage, if you click on the little link, say learn more about your teacher, I put in that I'm a mixed martial artist and that I was competitive. I never mention anything like specific about the UFC and just because if they're curious, they'll figure it out. Because even if you type in Felicia Coppinger, it just comes up all Felicia Spencer stuff on Google. It's crazy that it comes up like that, but it does.
Yeah, because like if I was like back in like seventh grade and I find out my teacher is like a professional mixed martial artist, I would have gone crazy. I would have sat next to the desk. But I think it's really cool that like you're also teaching, you're also a mathematician. That is crazy. I literally almost cried when I took trig in high school. So the fact that you went to college and you find it fun? Do you find
I
math fun?
I enjoy teaching. I like algebra. Look, I rode the struggle bus in, the higher level math classes, like calculus, I took multiple times each of the calculus part, like, I struggled, which is part of why I was like I knew I always wanted to be a teacher, and then I do like the puzzle of math, which, I feel like it's the process to, like, get through the puzzle that I like and that I like to explain to students, like, you can do hard things, like, you can it's not about, like, the 50 watermelons in the back of the pickup truck, like, it's about, you know, getting into, it's critical thinking, right? Like, go because when you do get a job, no matter what it is, you're gonna get things thrown at you that don't make sense, and you have to figure it out, so that process of figuring it out is what it's all about, whether it's math or political science, whatever it is. So I like to really stress like that side of things, and the fact that I did struggle helps me like connect and like, this isn't easy, but you can figure it out if you want to and you put your mind to it. So um but yeah, so it wasn't so much that I was like a great math student, although I did do really good through algebra. Yeah, I was just I like teaching.
I struggled. I literally was like looking into the sky, praying that something would go on that piece of paper and make it right. Cause I struggled in every aspect of math. But I wanted to ask you one last question, and before we go, because obviously I don't want to keep you too much. Um, are you content with everything that's like happened in your career? And are you happy with the decisions you made to leave the sport, and are you happy with life post MMA? Because I think what a lot of people, um, for me at least, from what I've seen, some people like to stick it out and ride it until they get something nice. But some people can leave and say, "Nah, I'm okay. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm okay with everything that comes after." Is that
Yeah.
you at this moment?
Yeah, there's a lot of, like, parts to my life, and there's a lot of, like, challenges that, like, if you're a fighter, you every day, every month, you're setting goals, overcoming challenges, and when you move on from that career, if that's still you, like, you're still gonna do that. You're the type of person that's gonna, like, push through whatever you want to push through, entrepreneurship, like, my husband and I started fixing up some dilapidated properties, and we're like on
Oh,
our
cool.
on a new path of like trying to become entrepreneurs and make our path that way. So I'm grateful for what fighting helped me to start with that. Um and yeah, I think no matter what, like if you're afraid of like what your future will hold, you should be. We don't know what it's gonna be. I don't know where I'm gonna be in 5 years, and things change like that, and but the nice thing is I know we're always up for the challenge, and it's like it's the don't be afraid of the unknown, like, I have no idea what I'm gonna do next year, but I'm excited to find out.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much. I don't know if this is gonna cut off soon because I have less than a minute, but I just
Yeah.
want to say thank you so much for your time and letting me interview you. Like, this was such a great time, guys. And guys, I hope you guys enjoy it, and like and all that stuff. And yeah, guys, thanks.
Alright, thank you. Have a great day, guys.